What's up, gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. In this video, we are going to get into the raw truth of why you should become a passport bro right now. And it should be your #1 goal and priority. And I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but stick with me for a couple minutes so I can lay out exactly why this is true. First and foremost, it is a cheat code to life. Everyone is looking for an easier path than the one they are currently on, and I don't blame you. In fact, life is not fair, and so if you find a way to exploit the system, you exploit that system and that exploit for as long as possible. And here is exactly what I mean by that. If you choose to exploit the passport bro lifestyle, you are going to exploit the US dollar, and this is going to allow you to get further and farther in a faster amount of time, especially as it relates to money and investments. And we will talk about dating and girls a little bit later on in this video, but stick with me here. And the reason I say that is because, for example, in the United States, $1 is $1. But in many other countries, including in Western European countries, $1 might be $10. It might be $15 because the cost of living is dramatically lower. And in some places, the currency is just much weaker. So if you combine a weaker currency with a lower cost of living, well, then you might have a 200x return on your single dollar. And this is important for you because it allows you to invest more money, which will help you build your wealth. Now, let me tell you a very brief story. So I first left the United States about 10 years ago or so. And the reason I did this, I've told this story before, is because I wanted to lower my cost of living. I was living in San Diego at the time, so that I could reinvest more money into my business. Whether that was building a team, whether it was marketing, whether it was product development, whether it was product fulfillment, it didn't matter. And that was a hack that allowed me to get further and farther faster than most of my competition, because instead of paying around, let's say, $3,000 to $4,000 a month on expenses in my personal life living in San Diego, well, I only had to spend $500 to $1,000, especially back then in Bangkok. And so that was found money that I could reinvest into my business. And if you don't have your own business, but you choose to be a freelancer, or you're maybe living off of passive income, well, it's going to allow you to build that nest egg even faster, because you can put even more money into your investments or savings or whatever other assets that you are interested in. And another thing I'll add is, this is a story that I haven't told. When I was living in Southeast Asia, I was traveling around and I was meeting people of various different income levels, and I got connected with some people who were in the investment industry. And they were talking to me about investments in the surrounding areas. And obviously, I'm a little bit skeptical of someone who works in investments and talking about investments. But I started to do my own research. And then there's something called the New Silk Road, which is a huge economic development thing that China is going through but it goes through multiple countries. And so by having my boots on the ground, I was aware of new investment opportunities in places like Cambodia, in places like Vietnam, and various other places as well. And so you don't only need to invest in the United States, you can invest in third world countries that are up and coming. And oftentimes these have better returns on investment, but obviously do your own research, and I am not an investment advisor. But that is just one additional opportunity that comes about from having this type of lifestyle. Next, the reason you want to do this right now is because it only gets increasingly harder as time goes by. So residency requirements, visas, they only get harder and harder to obtain, especially if you are in it for the long term. Here are just a couple examples of what I mean by residency and visas being harder to obtain. So, for example, Thailand, 5-10 years ago, you could just do border runs and you could pretty much stay in Thailand indefinitely. But the Thai government caught on to what people were doing and they put a crackdown on that, so people started getting rejected at the border. Additionally, something similar happened in Mexico. So in Mexico, you used to get 180 days on arrival, pretty much guaranteed, no questions asked. Now, they are doing a lot more research into you and how many times you've been in Mexico and things of that nature before just granting you 180 days just like this. There's also some other stuff going on with the Mexican government where they are trying to crack down on the amount of foreigners who are illegally living in Mexico. And an example as it pertains to residency would be how the residency requirements, usually the amount of money it costs, are going up. For example, Mexico, I wouldn't say is expensive, but the requirements used to be a fraction of what they are now. And so it just keeps getting more and more expensive to accomplish some of these things. So if you're interested in getting residency, for example, that is another thing that you should get on right now, because in a few years, it may not be accessible to the average person, because some of the requirements have gone from, 25,000 to 250,000. And I know that may not affect many of you, but here is something that you will want to know. It also makes dating harder in the long term as well, because economic development in many of these places increases the standard of living and makes it harder to date women abroad. Now, let me be more specific here. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people would go to these very economically depressed areas and they would take advantage of the US dollar, the euro, or they would take advantage of the status of being from a Western country. And I'm not one to judge. Like I said, if you find an exploit in life, you should exploit it for as long as possible so that you can squeeze as much juice out of that orange. The thing is that over time, it becomes harder to exploit these things. So many places in Eastern Europe, for example, aren't how they used to be because the standard of living is so much higher than it was before. This is true in a lot of places in Latin America as well. This is also true in a lot of places in Asia. Of course, there are certain exceptions, namely the Philippines and Colombia. But there were a lot more countries similar to the Philippines and Colombia 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so the longer you take to develop this lifestyle, the less juice you can squeeze out of this orange, until eventually there's not even going to be any juice left in this orange. And so that's why I say you need to focus on achieving this lifestyle right now as soon as possible so that you can have a cheat code in life so that you can go farther faster and get more bang for your buck so that you can experience true upward mobility simply by exploiting the dollar. All right, so that's going to wrap up this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. It will help me with the algorithm. Let me know your thoughts on this topic as well. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. And I will see you guys next time. And as always, peace, much love.